Hi, this is Trevor Conkergood from Sunset Stitches. Welcome to the Quick Start Guide to using Artistic Sewing Suite embroidery software. Hopefully by now you've already watched the introduction to the Artistic Sewing Suite software, and so now I'm ready to go ahead and try and show you as much as I possibly can in a quick video that's aimed at getting you started using the software right away. So what I'm going to do is just pop over to the desktop, take a closer look, and the first thing I wanted to show is under the File drop-down menu, you'll find here a list of designs that you've recently opened. So basically, if you're wanting to work again on a design that you recently worked on, it'll be found in this list here. And so basically the last design I created was this number 3 draw. I'll go ahead and select it now. And it opens it up on the screen. Now, remember what I had said earlier about the Creative Drawings program is that the most important format for us is going to be that draw.draw format. That's the format that we make and use for creative drawings. And so when you look under that File drop-down menu, these are draw files that I've already created or opened. Now, if the file that you're looking for is not in this list, then you would simply go to the Open option, and when you choose Open, it gives you a dialog, which I'll just move that over so it fits on our screen good. And in this dialog here, you have the ability to select the different locations on your computer, choose the folder that you want to look in, so this is your drop-down menu for going specifically to a folder, and then you're able to select any .draw file that you want. So yeah, and then we'll talk a little bit more in the Quick Start Guide about exporting your draw files in Stitch format. So now what I think I'll do is start talking about creating new designs using the Creative Drawings software. Okay, so what we're going to do now is continue with the Quick Start Guide for Artistic Sewing Suite, and now instead of opening up a design, what I'd like to do is talk about creating a new design from different artwork sources. And so what I'll do is just bring over my mouse and select the File drop-down menu and choose New for New Design. Now a window opens up, and in here the dialog has several choices, and I'll just review them quickly. We've got From a File, and this means from a selection of artwork that we choose by clicking on this button. The next option is From Embroidery, and this means that we can choose from selecting our own embroidery designs and then have those brought onto our screen and either edit, modify them, or add to them. You can also choose to get an image from a scanner, or get an image from a webcam, or get a new graphic. So those are your different choices here. And you also have the ability in this open artwork source dialog to choose your embroidery hoop, and maybe I'll just show that at this part. Basically, there's all of these different embroidery hoops, and you'll see, I'll just scroll down through the list. It's quite a vast selection of different makes and models of embroidery machines, but we also have the ability to create our own hoops and manage the hoops. And what I'll do, I'll show, we'll be coming back to that later in the video to look at it in more depth. But for now, I'll just go ahead and select, maybe I'll just choose the Janome SQ hoop. And so what we're going to do is start by choosing the From a File. In other words, I want to work from a graphic, from an art image. And so I pop on this button to open up a Open Artwork dialog window. And this is where you can use your computer, browse the different locations of your computer, and I'm specifically looking in the folder Creative Drawings Samples, which I had shown in the introduction video how to find this, but it's found under your Public Documents folder. And then we had a folder called Creative Drawings Samples, and inside of that folder there was all sorts of different pieces of artwork that came with the software. You can see here I currently have selected this flower image, which is in the list of artwork is found right here. And so that's the name of the file that I have selected. If I click on a different file, that's the one that will be shown. So that's just shows you what image you have selected. And right now it says Files of Type, and it says All Supported, which means in the window up here it will show any artwork file that there is available in that folder. And I'll just use the drop-down menu to show you again, these are the types of artwork images that you can open using Creative Drawings. Excuse me, please. We have Adobe Illustrator files, CorelDRAW files, EPS files, Jpeg, bitmap, and all sorts of graphic files that you can choose from. And I'll be talking a little bit more about the different types, I guess. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to start with one of these CorelDRAW CMX files. And I'm just going to allow it to select this flower design and say open. Okay, so now that basically says that's the flower design that I have selected here. So what I need to do is say next. And now what I can actually do is I'm just going to bring this box over a little bit and show you that behind it, the artwork for the flower is already on my screen and in my embroidery hoop. Now the next step in this, following through this import artwork stage, is to choose the fabric. And this is a very important step, so I'm just going to review it a little bit. You'll notice here, I have the heading Embroidery Smooth, and there's all these different choices, whether it be cotton or corduroy. But I'm just going to use this minus button to collapse this list. So these are the general headings for types of fabric that you can choose. Embroidery Smooth, Embroidery Ultralight, Embroidery Light, Embroidery Normal Light, Embroidery Normal, and Embroidery Heavy. And under each one of these, we have choices. So if you can choose Embroidery Heavy and you're going on chenille or cross-stitch cloth, then you can make that choice. Embroidery Normal, we have all sorts of choices. Maybe we want to choose cotton. And so basically, what happens is, when we select the fabric, the software is going to be able to calculate settings for the embroidery design, like stitch length, density, underlay choices, based upon the fabric and formulas or information that's been stored in the software, so it knows when you choose a certain type of fabric to make adjustments to the way the design is stitched out. So I'll go ahead and choose Embroidery Normal and Cotton, which is a pretty normal selection. And then you also have the ability to choose the color of the fabric, and that's entirely up to you. It doesn't necessarily change the way it stitches out as much as just the way it's going to appear on your embroidery screen. So when I choose next, now I'm brought to a screen where I can have the ability to reduce the number of colors. So what happens is the software recognizes that there are 6 colors in this design, and notice if I hold my mouse over top of the yellow and the design highlights, and just if I scroll through, there's the pink, there's the bright pink, then we have a light purple, green, and the dark purple. So the idea is here that these are the colors that the software recognized from the artwork, and you have the ability to reduce those colors. And I'll come back to, we'll do it again in a moment, and I'll show you how you could reduce the number of colors. But for this time, I think I'm just going to leave the number of colors set at 6, which was the default. And I'll also talk a little bit about the palette. So here you can choose, and I'll just grab the drop-down list to show you that, again, we have a very large selection of different brands of embroidery thread that you can choose from. So right now, I guess we're set on the Janome palette of colors, and so therefore all of the numbers are getting listed in Janome thread brands. But if we chose a different brand of colors, maybe I'll go with Madeira Classic, then you're going to get Madeira Classic numbers. So it really doesn't matter what embroidery thread you use, but this is your ability to get everything to display in a brand that you may be using. Now we're going to say Finish, and you'll see that the design is now been created. It's on my screen, and I could therefore send it over to my embroidery machine and stitch it out. So why don't we talk right now a little bit about what I would need to do to finish up. I guess first of all, we've created the embroidery design, and you'll see it's just called Untitled, and to me that's not a wise move. I'd like to see it saved and given a name so that we know how to find it again at a later time. So I would choose File and Save. And again, you get a Save As window that comes up where you could then browse the folders of your computer. And here I've got a folder that's just my public documents and the Creative Drawing samples. And you'll notice here that I created my own folder underneath that creative drawing samples for Trevor's designs. And so that was just my way of being a little bit more organized. And if you want to create a new folder, then I guess you would just come to this button right here and say new folder, and then you could call that new folder anything you want. So we'll just call it more designs. It doesn't matter. So you can create as many folders as you like to help you organize your embroidery designs. Now, the next thing I need to do is give it a name. So why don't we just call it flower? Oops. So flower, and the type of file that I'm saving it as is .draw. And that's important because I always want to save my design first of all as a draw file, because that's the file, I'll say save, that's the file that includes all of the different embroidery objects that were created by the software, the objects that we could therefore go forward with, make modifications to, and I'll be diving in further into how to control and modify designs, but in general it's very important, and I want to drive this home, always save your work as a draw file. Now, once you have a draw file, let's say you want to send this design off to a friend of yours and they don't have Artistic Sewing Suite. Maybe they've got a different type of embroidery software. Maybe they don't even have embroidery software. They just have an embroidery machine and you want to send it to them. Well, then you could choose the File and Save As option. And now, instead of choosing Draw as my format, see, here's my file, flower.draw, under my new folder that I made called More Designs. I'm just going to choose from the drop-down menu for Format or Files of Type and choose. You have all different types of embroidery formats that you could choose from. So if I wanted to email this design to somebody with a Janome machine, or for that matter, if I have my own Janome machine and I want to stitch it out, I'll need to save it as a JEF file. And so I'll choose JEF from the drop-down menu and choose Save, and that's it. Now I've created my file. I have the draw version. Oh, one more step comes up. This says select macro to use. I'm not exactly sure what the term macro to use, but basically, depending on what format you choose, you may get a list for the different types of machines. And in this case, Janome Generic is the only option, so I just say OK. And it says the file has been saved with 16,704 stitches, and I'll say OK. So there we have it. Now I could take this design and I have a draw file that I would be able to open up and modify. If I look under my file drop-down menu, there it is there, flower.draw. Or I have that file saved in that same location as a JEF file, which I could then save to my PC card and take to my Janome embroidery machine, or I could email it to a friend if that was my purpose. So yeah, so that's just a small example of using the software. And what I'm going to do now is just do the demonstration again, and we'll show you what happens if we use the color reduction on the flowers. Okay, great. So we've created our first embroidery design and we're ready to dive in and do some more. What I'm going to do is pop over to my desktop again, choose File and New. Same artwork source dialog comes up. It's already selected the flower that was used from the last time, and if I'm wanting to do the flower again, I need to do nothing more than just simply choose Next. Okay, and again, I'm just going to move the window over here so you can see there's my flower on my screen. You can tell it's a new one because if you remember last time, I had changed the background to be pink. So we'll just leave it as beige this time. It'll make it easy to tell the difference between the two designs. So whatever, I'm going to leave it with the same embroidery normal, cotton as my fabric choice, and choose Next. Okay, now this is the part I wanted to take a look at, how you can reduce the colors. And so remember I showed if I just mouse over these, there's that color, there's this color, this color, this color, this color, and this color. And what if you wanted to do, well, okay, I don't really want there to be the pink. I think I'll just go with 3 flowers that are all the same color. So what I would need to do is choose this lighter pink and make it be the same color as this lighter purple. And all I have to do is simply just click on the lighter pink here, bring my drag it with my mouse, and then let go, and I've put it beside the purple. See, and so that's going to basically make those colors be the same color. And the same thing here, this is the darker pink, that was the outline around that flower, and I'll do the same. I'll combine it with the darker purple, so I'll just drag it up, let go. So now I only have 4 colors in my design. I reduced it by 2. The original was 6. So I'll just drag it back. See, there's all 6. Now, if you just use the slider to drag this, then the software is going to decide how to reduce those colors for you. And as you can see here, it's making quite odd choices. That's not what I had in mind. So I'll just put it back to 6. What I really want is the light pink to be the same as the light purple, and this red color to be the same as the dark purple. And now I'm going to say finish. And ta-da, it's done. That's it. So we were able to control the colors of the design based upon reducing them. So it was just an extra little step in there that allows us to decide, and this will become even more important as we go forward. You see, we used a CorelDRAW file that only had 6 colors. But as we go forward later and we start looking at some of the raster images like JPEG or bitmap, where you may have 100 colors in your artwork and you only want to stitch out 2 or 3 or 4, then obviously that step becomes even more important. So yeah, okay, we're going to go ahead and continue looking at using the artwork sources. So I'll just go ahead and maybe choose File, Save As, and remember I can save it as a draw file, so we'll call it, I don't know, Flower 2. Flower 2, oh, with some funky spelling for flower. There. Flower 2, it doesn't really matter. You can call your names and your designs any name you want. And so now if I look under my file drop down list, there's flower2.draw, there's flower.draw, and then there's the previously open designs that I'd made. So okay, now what I'm going to do is prepare to go forward, and we'll talk about using from an embroidery design to create a new embroidery. Continuing along with our quick start guide to Artistic Sewing Suite, we're going to look at creating an embroidery design from an existing embroidery design that we already have. So I'll go ahead and start a new design, and you don't have to use the drop down menu all the time. There's a button right here on the toolbar for new, so I'll just click on that button, say new. Same artwork source, options box comes up, and this time instead of working from an artwork file, we'll choose to work from an embroidery file. And so again, once I've selected that radio button, I just simply click on this button over here to bring up the options, or the basically to browse your computer and select your embroidery design. And again, it comes up with all supported types in the types of files. But notice now when I click on that, instead of showing me artwork, it shows me all supported types of embroidery designs. So you could open any number of different embroidery formats, and by choosing all supported types, it simply shows you in the folder that you're looking in, which I'm looking in the creative drawing samples, it shows you all of the embroidery designs that are available. So these are .ngs files that have been created and supplied with the software. And you can see here I have these hearts selected right here, and you just, whatever file you click on is the embroidery design that it's going to want to open up and bring into your creative drawings workspace. Now, for example, if I had something like these hearts and I said open, so now the number is shown here, the CDW0004.ngs, that's the design we just selected. So I would say next to go forward. And once again, we're given the same fabric choice options box, and I'll just allow it to go forward with the same fabric choice of cotton. That's fine. And then again, we get that color reduction. I'll just move this over. We get the color reduction option that we could then go ahead and reduce the number of colors from the existing embroidery design if we wanted to. I'm just going to leave it the way it was and say finish. So that's it. We've basically imported an embroidery stitch file into the creative drawing software, and at this point you could modify it, and there's all sorts of ways that you could either modify the existing design or you could add to it. For example, if I wanted to just simply open up a design and add some embroidery text to go with it, I would just choose my edit text tool, and then I'll just click on my workspace to start my text, and a little bit of a flashing prompt right there, and I'll just go ahead and type in I love U. Oh, that's not Y-O-U. And when I click left click on the desktop, it finishes it. Now, when I left click on the desktop, it actually gives me a new prompt, and I could type in whatever, mom, or whatever. Oop, terrible typing today. And I'm done. So whenever I'm done adding text, I could come back up to my select option, choosing that tool, and I can easily select on this text, and let's just say I want to select it and maybe move it to be a different location. So I'll put I love you above, and I'll put mom, select mom, click on mom, put mom below. So that's the idea, is you can import an embroidery design, and then you can either add to it or modify it, and then when you're ready to, you could, first of all, we could say file and save, and we could choose to save this as a draw file. So maybe I'll go within my whatever, Trevor's Designs, and we'll just call it I love you mom, and save that. And then if you needed to stitch it out, again, you would go file, save as, choose from the list of embroidery formats. So for me it's Janome, I'll just choose my format and say save. So there we have it. So I've saved it as a draw file. Oh, and again, I have that option. I need to choose the Janome generic format. I believe, and I haven't used a lot of different embroidery models with the software, but I believe if we choose a different brand, there may be more than one option here, and that's why we have this step, to be sure that if there may be certain settings, especially with some of the commercial machines, that need to be observed when it saves the JEF file. So I'm just going to go ahead and say JEF, Janome generic, and say OK, and it's done. 13,000 stitches, and we're ready to stitch that JEF file out. So, okay, that's a little bit about how to add your own stitch file into a Creative Drawings design, and then add lettering to it. And of course I'll be showing lots more about adding lettering. So now what I think I'm going to do is go ahead and we'll talk a little bit more about creating embroidery designs from some of the other artwork sources. Continuing along with the Quick Start Guide to the Artistic Sewing Suite software, this time I'd like to create a design for use with the venere cut needles. And so what we'll do is just pop over to the desktop, and I'll choose New, and again the same artwork source dialog comes up, and instead of choosing a piece of artwork or a piece of embroidery design or even an image from a scanner or webcam, this time I'm just going to choose New Graphic, which basically means I'm not going to have any art source at all. And I'll say Next. Same fabric settings are fine, and say Finish. Okay, so now imagine we wanted to create an embroidery design of a shape of a star, but we wanted to cut the center of the star out for use with that venere cutting needles to create cutwork embroidery. So what I'll do is I'll just bring over the Shapes tool, and remember, if you click on the Shapes tool, it'll fly open and you can choose from circle or ellipse to polygon or whatever shape you want. I'm just going to choose the star shape. Now to use the tool, I have to left click to place the star, and then I have to drag to create the size of the star. I can create the shape, whether it be tall and skinny or short and fat, but when I'm happy with the shape of the star that I've created, I let go. Now there is more ability to control the shape of that star than just what I've done so far, and to be able to show you that, I need to also point out that I'm missing one of my toolbars, and I left it off on purpose so that you could see basically under the View drop-down menu, there's an option for toolbars, and when I open that toolbars options, you can see here these are all of the toolbars that we have. And so under tool options, this was turned off, and if I just click on it now, it'll turn on the tool options. And so now we can see I still have my star selected. We could control the number of rays in the star, so it's set as an 8-point star. If you'd rather have a 6-point star, you just change that number to 6, hit enter, changes it to a 6-point star. If you wanted to have a 5-point star, change it to a 5-point star. It's really up to us. So you can have as many points to your star as you want. There's a 9-point star. You can also control the starting angle, so it's set at 90, which means the top point is right up at 90. If you wanted to, you could make it, I don't know, let's just go to 125 or something like that. Kind of rotates my star a little bit. You also have the ability to set the ray size. So for example, right now the ray size is set at 70. If I change that down to, let's say, 50 and hit enter, you'll see that it makes that change as well. So that's your tool options. And now to finish creating the star, I just simply right click and it lets go of the tool. And now you can see in my tool options I have many more other than just the number of rays and the size. I could control all sorts of things like the rotation, the outline of it. And I'm going to be talking much more in depth about the tool options at a later point, but I wanted to point out that that's one of the ways that we create shapes. Now, talking about this object that we've just created, I'm going to zoom in and show that basically what you have is a piece of fill, and it looks like it's got a run-in stitch outline. And I'm just going to zoom back out and show, if I click, using my select tool, if I click on this star shape, and then I look right down here at the bottom closely, I can tell that this object has a light blue fill because of the fill paint bucket and a dark blue outline because of the blue pencil, the pencil on the dark blue. Now let's say, for example, you didn't want an outline. I do want an outline, but I'm just, as in theory, let's say you didn't want an outline. The very first option is blank. That means no fill or no outline. And fill is determined by the bottom half of a square. Outline is determined by the top half of a square. So if I wanted to have no outline, then all I would simply need to do is click here on the empty box in the top half. So see what happened? It set my fill to be, my fill is still set at light blue, but my outline has been turned off. It's set on the pencil is now on the blank. Maybe we wanted an outline, but we just didn't want it to be dark blue. Well, this is my color palette here, and if you said, well, actually, I'd like to have a red outline, I could just come over to the red option and left click on the top half of that. And so now, looking down to the bottom, we can see that we've got a blue fill, and it's got a red outline on it. So that's a little bit about how you can control, for each object, the fill and the outline. Now, if I zoom in again real close, you'll see that now we have, and I'll just click off, a blue fill with a red outline. Now again, using my select tool, I just click on the object to select it, and then looking at the object properties, you can see here, this is the fill, and the fill is set as a step, or basically a weave fill. And then if I click on this tab, the outline is set as a running stitch. Now, if we were going to do a cutwork design and we were going to have, basically we want to make a star that's been voided or cut out in the middle, not filled in, but cut out, but we need to have a better than a run-in stitch outline to finish off that cutwork edge. I'd rather have a satin serial outline, so I just choose that option. So there we can see the satin serial. Now, if I wanted to control the width of that satin serial, I would come back up to the tool options box, and here I can see that my outline is set at 0.4 millimeters. If I change that to be, let's say, 1 millimeter, it'll make that outline a little bit fatter. If I change that to 2 millimeters, it'll make that outline fatter again. So, excuse me. Now I have a star with a weave fill and a satin stitch outline. And if you zoom in, you can see quite clearly that the satin stitch outline is nice and bold. And so this is probably what I would want to create to make this venere cut embroidery design. So we would be finished with creating the draw file at this point. Although there's one more thing I think I want to show before I move forward, and this is something that kind of relates to customizing your workspace. But remember, I just showed you how to turn on the tool options toolbar, but it occupies quite a bit of the space of my desktop. And so what I wanted to show you right at this point is, if I look very closely right here, you can see there's this little push pin. And you'll see there are several push pins. So for example, there's a push pin for the object properties box. There's a push pin for the tool options. Whenever there's a push pin like this, pushing the push pin set pointing down will hold your toolbar in place. But if I click on that push pin, it turns my push pin sideways. And what it did was it hid the tool options. And notice, I'll just move my mouse off. It goes away. But if I hold my mouse over that toolbar, it rolls down. And so notice here, the push pin has now been set to point sideways. Sideways means automatically hide this toolbar. And if I click on it again, it turns it back to a up and down push pin, and the tool options will stay open. So that's something that as you become more familiar with the software, you may want to have all of your toolbars turned on, but use the push pin to hide them so that they take up less space on your desktop, and then whenever you need them, you just mouse over them and up they come. So now, okay, that was a little tangent, but what I want to do now is go forward and save this design so that we can then export it to the editor or our Wings modular and prepare it for the venere cut. So what I need to do is simply say File and Save, and the first thing I'm going to do is save this. Here I am in the same folder, Creative Drawing Samples. I made the folder Trevor's Designs. Now we're going to save it as a draw file because it's always important to save that draw file. I'll just call it star.draw and save it. So that's great. I can always come back and make modifications to this design again, but what I want to do is now send it over to the Wings modular software for adding that venere cut. Basically, we're going to replace the weave fill with a venere cut, and that'll be very easy to do. So to send that over to the editor, the easiest way would just be to bring up your File drop-down menu and look for the export, and in this case we're going to export to the editor. The editor means to Wings modular. And I'll just point this out. Control E is the shortcut to send this design to your editor, and you'll find that in time you'll always use Control E versus pulling the drop down menu. So when I choose that, it brings up Wings modular, and you'll see that it brings my design already ready to sew in the Wings modular. Now when you look at Wings modular, the one thing I'll point out right now is in the sequence manager, the first thing you get is like an image of the design. So basically it shows me I've got a blue fill with a red outline. And then I have the sewing sequence. There's the blue fill, then there's the red outline, and this final step is actually just going to be the jumps that when the machine returns back to the hoop center. That's always there in every design. So what I wanted to do is select this blue fill. I'll just click on, in the sequence manager, click on the blue fill, and you'll see that it has selected that embroidery object. And what I want to do is right click over top of that object, and whenever you right click you get an additional options box. Secondary clicking or right clicking gives you more tool options, and in this case I want to change to venere cut. So that's the step that takes it from a weave fill to change to venere cut. So I'll go ahead and do that. Now, a couple things we can notice that are different. First of all, the second color of our design no longer is filled in with that light blue color. Instead, it shows it as a whole. And notice right here, the little scissor icon with the needle, this represents venere cut. Now we know that we have, this is a picture of the design, so basically this design sews a venere cut step and then a satin stitch border. That's the design we've made. And that's ready to stitch out. We could simply go File, Save As. Here comes the Save As box, and maybe I'll go into that Creative Drawing Samples folder, go into Trevor's Designs, and choose to save it. Now, I'm going to choose to save it as the Janome Jeff format because that's what I would need if I wanted to sew this design out, and I'm going to call it star. So I got star.jeff, and I'll hit save. Okay, and now again, this is that same kind of Janome generic options, and you have a little bit of an option here about setting the maximum stitch length in the design and for in between the objects, and I'll just leave it set at the maximum size. We can perhaps dive into that a little bit more detail later on, but I'll say OK, and so it's done. So that would be ready to take to my machine and sew. But before I do that, I'll just highlight, if I bring up my File and my Print option, it brings up a Print Preview box. And in this Print Preview box, you'll be able to see a lot of different things, including, this is the sewing sequence right here. And it's also, this is the sewing sequence shown with sort of icons or images. And what you can see here is the venere cut is that set of needles. And so you've probably noticed that you have a red needle, a blue needle, a black needle, and a green needle. And that's what this is showing me, is that you're going to start the design up. The machine's going to tell you that you want to sew the color red, and you need to know that the color red is not red embroidery thread, it's the red cutting needle. Okay, and then the color blue will be for the blue cutting needle, color black will be for the black color needle, and the color green will be for the green needle. So I'll use all 4 of my needles to cut the center of this star out, and then when that's finished, then it'll sew the satin stitch border that sews around the hole that we would have removed from our fabric using the venere cut needles. So that's a very sort of simple overview of the process of creating a venere cut design. And now what I'm going to do is just continue on with the quick start guide and look at some of the other art sources that we can create using Artistic Sewing Suite software. I'm going to continue with the quick start guide to Artistic Sewing Suite, and this time we're going to take a look at using different artwork sources. So I guess the first thing I'm going to do is just minimize the Wings modular so that I can get back to using the Creative Drawings software. And we'll go ahead and say new to start again. And this time we're going to choose the From a File option, but instead of going to the samples that came with the software, I've just simply saved a couple of JPEG images into my designs folder. And what I'm going to do is show you I've got just a simple red and white, or red heart with a white background as a JPEG. And remember, JPEG images, same with bitmap and GIF, they're not vectorized. Vector artwork means it has an outline and a fill color. In a JPEG, really all you have are dots of color, and there may be many shades of red in this artwork. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and say open. And what you'll find is that now we need to say next to go forward, and this is what comes up. This is something that we haven't seen yet, and this is the artwork image options box. And because we're using a JPEG or a raster image, non-vectorized artwork, it gives us the ability to open it as a backdrop, which would mean we would digitize the artwork ourselves, or we could have it trace that artwork and convert it into outline, so automatically digitize our JPEG artwork. Or we could go with open as a cross stitch or open as photo stitch, and I'll select some different images for doing these ones in a moment, but I think I'll just start from the beginning. So we'll do open as backdrop, select next, and then the other option is going to be your fabric, which is the same as before. I'll say just leaving it set for the same is fine, and say finish. So there, what it does is basically just brought the JPEG heart onto our screen, and there's no embroidery created, so we would then have to create the artwork ourselves. Now what I'm going to do is show you how I could draw this heart myself. This tool here, if I click on it to open up the options, you'll see that we have 3 choices: create freehand shapes, create shapes using a Bezier tool, or create shapes using the outline tool. And I will look at all of these choices, but for now I think I'll choose the Bezier option. And I'm going to zoom in more closely because it's much more easier to be accurate with drawing shapes if you zoom in. And I have a wheel mouse, and I have the wheel set for scrolling, so if I scroll up it zooms in, and if I scroll down it zooms out. Of course, we also have the ability to use this tool for zooming in and zooming out as well, but it's very convenient for me having my scroll mouse to be able to do that just with my hand on my mouse. Anyway, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'll put my first point right here at the sort of center of my heart, and then you'll see I get a dotted line which becomes it's a straight line, but I can make it curved because it's a Bezier tool. What that means is, watch, if I'll make it here, and you can see that my dotted line is not following the shape, but if I click and then drag, I get these arrows, and by controlling the arrows I can adjust the shape of that line. See how I did that? Now it gives me the dotted line, and notice this too. If I bring my dotted line up towards the top of my screen, it'll actually move the screen for me. That's called auto panning. It'll move around your screen wherever you go. So you go ahead and put your point on the line, and if you want to get it, remember it's going to be straight, but if you want it to curve, you just left click and drag, and it creates that curve for you. So if you continue with this left click and drag sort of technique, you can easily create the curve of the line that you're trying to design. Now, as you go forward with this, if you get to an area like now where it's really not a curved line, it's just straight, then you just simply can click and not drag to get that straight line. But if you want a little bit of curve, you can just always pull that little drag and see what it gives you, those arrows to do this with. So I just pan it down and I'll move a little bit, and then right here I would click and obviously not drag because I want a nice sharp corner for that. And then I can go back to clicking and dragging to create those curved lines, and auto pan to move my artwork on my screen. So you will get to be very comfortable using this Bezier tool. Certainly it's very easy to use, and it's really just a matter of a little bit of practice of clicking and dragging. The easiest way you can do it is to get yourself some basic shapes like this heart and just go ahead and try to use the tool. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish drawing my heart, and before I get too far ahead, now when I clicked on the what I did there was when I had started right here, and when I clicked on that same spot, it actually snapped right to it, and when I clicked on it, it knew that I had closed the shape, and so it finished that shape, and right now it's sort of left in that stage where I'm still designing it. I could get my object tools out if I wanted to, but if I want to finish the heart shape, I just simply need to right click, and that will finish the tool, finish the shape, and I can see here that I've created a piece of embroidery. It's the shape of a heart. It has a weave fill, or a cayenne blue colored fill, and a dark blue outline. And remember, I could change if I wanted to change the outline to a satin border, I would just come here and do that. So another thing I didn't show, and I think I will show right now, is this tool here is called the Edit Shapes node, and I'm just going to turn that on and zoom in closely over part of the design and show if I click on one of the nodes, which are basically the points that I digitized to make the shape, it shows me those arrows that I was using, and it would allow me to adjust those arrows. So if I wanted to make a small adjustment to some of these to refine my shapes, I can get them to be as perfect as I want to. So that's the Edit Shape node tool. And remember, I'm going to be showing these things again with a little bit more detail later on. But in the quick start guide, I thought I would show, first of all, how to bring in a JPEG artwork and then create an embroidery design based upon your JPEG artwork. So we digitized this ourselves. Now what I'm going to do, I don't think I'll bother to save this design. I'm just going to say no, close the window. I'm going to start a new design again, and we still have that heart selected. So what I'm going to do is say next, and this time, instead of just opening this as a backdrop, I'm going to ask the software to trace that artwork, or in other words, convert the JPEG into outlines. In other words, automatically digitize this for me. So when I say next, we get another window, and this is new to us again, and this time it's our ability to influence the way the software is going to recognize the artwork that we've selected. And so we have several choices here, and they are, we can set the scale of the image. So it tells me right now that it sees 18 shapes. Remember, there could be who knows how many shades of red and white in this design. It's 6 centimeters tall by 5.7 centimeters wide, and if I wanted it larger, I could choose to scale the image, and instead of being 100%, I could make it 200%, and that'll adjust the size. Now, if I go to, notice when I adjust the size that it also sees more shapes, and I think that's because the pixels, and remember there could be who knows how many colors of red in here, it's recognizing them all. And so the way I'm going to be able to fix that is going to be by adjusting the accuracy and the color limit. Now, accuracy higher will give you more accurate, in other words, it'll more closely match the shapes. So now, turning the accuracy level up, it sees 458 shapes. Holy smokes, that's a lot of pieces of embroidery. If I reduced that to a lower number, I would end up with not quite a very nicely shaped heart. So obviously having the accuracy level higher is going to be better for the situation. But what I can now do is choose to control the color limit. And it's set right now at 99 by default. And like I said, as a JPEG, who knows how many shades of red there were in this design. I'm just going to go ahead and reduce that to 2. Red and white. And guess what? 2 shapes. The red heart and the white background. That's pretty cool. And one more choice that you have to adjust in here is the option use background, and right now it's not checked off, which means it's going to create embroidery for everything it sees, the white background as well as the red heart. If I don't want the white background, I can choose click use background, and it gives me a little color dropper. And so in this case, if I use my color dropper on the white background, it recognizes that I don't want to use white, and it'll remove it. And if you wanted to remove the red and leave the white, then I guess you could click here and it would choose red as the color to remove. So we're going to go with white as the color to remove for the background, leaves the red. And when I say trace, it'll go ahead, and I guess we still have that last step of selecting the fabric, so we'll just leave that set and say next. So now we've come to the last step, which is the color reduction, and because I've set the design to have one color, red, there's really nothing that we could do to reduce here, so we just have to say finish. So now you can see that the image has come in and the embroidery has automatically generated a heart for our image. So that was really great, and our heart is set as a red fill with no outline. If you decided you wanted an outline on it, well, that's no big deal. What color outline would you like? Maybe we want to get a black outline on it, so we'll come to black, click over the top of the black, and now I have a red fill with a black outline. Let's see what kind of outline we got. It's a running stitch outline. Why don't we go to a satin serial outline for it? So now you can see here that I've created a large piece of red fill, and it's got a very narrow satin outline on it, which I could turn on my view, my tool options, toolbars, get those tool options back open, and then go to that outline, which is set very small at 0.1, and make it be, let's say, a 3mm satin stitch outline. And so now, if I look closer, we've got a nice piece of red fill with a black satin outline. So the concept is you can take a JPEG artwork, have the software convert that artwork into outlines, and then have the software automatically create them. How about we, I'll go ahead and save this, why not? We put lots of work into making it. So I'll save, and we'll call it Heart 1, because we're going to do another one. Save. Now I'm going to select New. And same box comes up. This time I have a different heart that I brought in, and this heart has some outlines already added to it and some different things. So we'll try this one. I'll say OK, and then I'll say next. Now again, rather than just opening in a backdrop, basically means I'm going to digitize this myself using the tools. To be quite honest, you will have the most control over the effects or the end results doing it that way, but you also take the most steps to get there. So tracing it is the quick way to digitize something, and sometimes you don't get exactly the result you want, but of course we can always modify, and the more we learn to use the tools and edit things, the more we can get absolutely anything we want. I'll go forward and say trace the outlines. Now in this case, I'll leave the scale at the same, whatever it's 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters, that sounds fine. I'm going to turn the accuracy up to be as accurate as possible so that I get the best representation of the shapes as I can. It sees 206 shapes of color, and again, using that limiting the color is going to be my ability to say, well look, just give me red, white, and black. So let's set it for 3. Right, so now we're just about ready to go. It sees 6 shapes, that sounds good. However, I just wanted to show at this point, if I choose use background, and then I have white set as the background of void, it also wants to void out. There were some highlight marks on the heart that disappeared because it thinks it's part of the background. If I uncheck this, it leaves everything as is. So I'm not going to ask it to void out my background in this case. And I'll say trace and choose the fabric and say next. Now, yes, I have red and white and black, but again, I don't want to combine red and white because that's going to get rid of those little white highlights. So we're just going to leave it the way it is and say finish. And so it's done, it's created the embroidery. The only thing is, of course, I don't really want to stitch the white outside, so that's simple. I got my select tools chosen. I just click on that, and you can see right here it's selected that background, and then I can just hit delete, and it's removed. So I'm left with the red fill, the black outline, and the white highlight marks, and we would be ready to go ahead and stitch this out, and I'll just go ahead and choose save and call it Heart 2. Okay, so that's a little bit more about taking JPEG images and converting them into embroidery. And I guess now I'll just prepare to come back and talk about converting into cross stitch and photo stitch. Okay, I'm going to continue on with the quick start guide for the Artistic Sewing Suite, and this time we're going to create a cross stitch image from a Jpeg artwork. So I think we'll do the same heart that we had done in the last segment. And so what I'll do is go ahead and say new. And again, the heart's already selected, so I can say next. Now this time, instead of opening as a backdrop or tracing it to convert for automatic embroidery, we're going to ask it to open as cross stitch. So once that's selected, then I can say next. We need to choose the fabric, say next. Now, this is where we have to deal with this reducing the number of colors. Remember, the image that we had, it was a heart, and it really just had red, white, and black. 3 colors, but yet because that Jpeg artwork had what it's found 45 different shades of red and black, gray and white, that by reducing the number of colors in this case to just simply go down to 3, 1, 2, 3 right there, you can see what it's done is it's converting all of the white and the red into one and the black into another. Now this is our ability to say, okay, I think I'll make this pink color to be part of the red, and maybe these gray ones here I'll add to be included as part of the black, so that we've made some sort of control over the design. And now we could say, okay, finish. Now it's converted everything to cross stitch, and it's basically a 3-color cross stitch design. Now if I want to, I can zoom in a little closer and take a look at what it's created. So basically it sees the artwork that we had, and then it creates crosses for all of the colors. So it's very straightforward. There's not a lot of additional steps needed to create a cross stitch design, but it really comes down to your ability to sort of select those colors and then convert it into cross stitch. Now if I click on this cross stitch image, it will bring up the object properties for the cross stitch, where I can control things like the number of repeats and the cell size, which means the size of the square that we're working on. And you can see here all of the different colors that were available in this cross stitch design. So basically the software has gone ahead and reduced all of those colors to be just simply white, red, and black. And yeah, so this cross stitch design would be ready to stitch out if we wanted to, or save it as a JPEG, and then I could use it on my embroidery machine. Anyway, we'll take a little bit more look at cross stitch again later, but just a quick start, that's the way you would create a cross stitch design. And perhaps I'll go ahead and show the same thing for photo stitch. So I'll just go ahead and say, maybe I'll save this, why not? So we'll say file and save, and we'll call it heart cross. Heart cross draw, save. Okay, so now I'm going to say new. And again, we're going to go from a file. We've got the heart selected, same heart as before, but instead of doing cross stitch, I'm going to do photo stitch this time. Now, photo stitch, we have to go through this fabric selection setting, and the remaining step in this for photo stitch is basically set to work with 3 colors, so sort of the 3 primary colors, blue, red, yellow, and a black. And every photograph will be converted into 4 colors. It's always just simply set to 4 colors. Now, yes, you can reduce the number of colors, but so I guess that's one way that you can control your photo stitch. But usually you're going with 4 colors. And so if we say finish right now, what you can see here is, and I'll zoom in a little bit closer over it, that it's converted the stitching, and it creates each of those colors goes back and forth. If I take my mouse off of the image, it just allows you to see the thread a little bit better. And so you can see that it's created the white by being very open spacing, and then the red, it's got a little bit heavier in the red color in that area, and of course the black is very specifically been put into the area where the black is. So yeah, it's a little bit of an odd piece of artwork to use the photo stitch for, but that's in general how it works. Now maybe what I'll do is I'll come back with the next segment And of course, the remaining two artwork sources that we haven't looked at yet include using my webcam and using a scanner. So perhaps what I'll do is just prepare to use the webcam to capture a photograph of myself and then see what that looks like if I convert it to photo stitch. We're going to continue with the quick start guide for Artistic Sewing Suite, and this time what I wanted to do was show you how you could create an image from a webcam. And so I'm just going to simply start a new design, and now in the options box I'm going to choose Get Image from Webcam. And when I say next, it opens up a preview box, and now we're going to be able to see me on your screen. And so here I am in my office at Sunset Stitches. And so how you doing? Now what I'm going to do is show you a little bit about this preview box. It's selected the device, my webcam. I can control the resolution of the image. I can control some properties. If I just open up the properties options, you'll see I can control some things like the brightness and the contrast and saturation. I also have some advanced settings that you could control, I guess the automatic gain control, or if you wanted to take control of exposures and whatnot, mirror imaging, anti-flicker. You know, I haven't really played with a lot of these, to be honest. I don't do a lot of embroidery from my webcam, but you could. And so what we're going to do is just show how you take a picture. So I have the capture button. I'm just going to get a little closer to the computer here. Smile for the picture. Okay, so now it's captured the image. There I am. And what I want to do now is just simply save the image. So I'll say save. And it brings me to the folder where I've been working out of, Trevor's Designs. And so we'll give this a name. It wants to call it Snapshot. I'm going to call it Snapshot-Trevor. All right, and say save. Now once I save it, it automatically selects that image and moves forward to the next step, which is where I need to decide, do I want to open it as a backdrop, which I could then create embroidery over top of, or do I want to trace it to be automatically created into regular Swiss embroidery? Or would you like to have it converted into cross stitch? Or would you like to, in this case, I think I'll convert it to photo stitch. So we'll say OK, and next. You have your chat fabric selection, same as always. We'll just leave it at cotton, say next. And then that final step is the color reduction. And again, I'm just going to leave it set with the 4 colors, the 3 primary colors in black. When I click finish, it'll allow us to see what it's created. Now, here's the image in photo stitch, and when I bring my mouse and hover it over top of the embroidery, it brings that image that was taken and puts it in there so that you can see what it's meant to look like. And if I take it away, it kind of takes it out. And maybe what I'll do is just go over top of the image and zoom in so we can see what the software's done. You see, it's created the 4 colors and put them either more or less in different areas to create the depth of the photograph and all of the shading. So really, I think stitching something like this out is going to give you the most realistic what a finished result looks like. But you can see here quite clearly, if I keep zooming in, how it's created you know, more of the black color here where my eye was and less of it here where my sort of nose was shiny from the lighting. And so that's creating an image from a webcam. And perhaps what I'll do now is I'll show how I could open up an image that was a photograph that I had taken and then see what I can do about automatically converting that into embroidery. Okay, so continuing on with the quick start guide, this time I just wanted to go back to converting photographs into embroidery. And so what I'm going to do now is say new. And what I've done is saved an image of a sunset, and this is one that actually I took with my camera. That's the countryside here in Saskatchewan, and you know, some grain elevators over a lake with the sun setting beside it. And I thought it was a real pretty picture, and I used this one on my website. So I actually just took the image off the top of my website, saved it to my computer, and I'm going to select that photograph and open it up. Now we get the same sort of option, so I have to say next. We get that same option box. We can open it as a backdrop to digitize ourselves. We can have it traced into convert to outlines for automatic embroidery. We can have it converted to cross stitch or converted to photo stitch. So why don't we just take a look at all 3 of those, and I'll just go through them quickly and see what the differences are. So I'm just going to let it convert it to outlines for regular old embroidery. Right now I can see that the thing is about 25 centimeters wide, and if I wanted to make that smaller, I could come in here and reduce the size to be whatever you wanted. Let's say 70% of the original size. I have the ability to control the accuracy if I wanted to, so if I increase that number, it's going to more closely map to my artwork. And again, the color limit, with this being a photograph, I don't want to stitch 99 colors, so I'm going to say, well, why don't we try 10, just to see what that would look like. And so we'll see that it reduces those colors. And now I'm going to say trace. I have to choose the fabric. I'm just going to leave that set with cotton. And now we're given, shows us the 10 colors that it selected, and so we basically have a number of shades, everything from black to white, with yellows and golds and oranges in the middle for the sunset color. And so I'm going to say finish. And now we can take a close look and see how the software has interpreted my photograph and converted that into embroidery. So I'd say it actually did a pretty reasonable job. I don't know if it's exactly what we wanted, but it's certainly interesting looking and reasonable. So 10 colors and what estimates at 24,000 stitches, and so when it fits in my hoop size nice. So yeah, that's converting a photograph into regular embroidery. Now let's try again, and this time I'm going to say new, and I'm going to save from the same sunset image, but instead of tracing it for outlines, I'll just ask it to open it as cross stitch. Say next. There we've got the fabric setting. I'll just say next. Now, again, we're back to this number of colors, and unless you want to be changing colors all day long, I think we probably want to choose to reduce the number of colors, and so I think I had gone to, again, choosing to go to 10. All right, and this is showing me now how they're being combined, and you would have the ability to say, well, gee, I think I want this orange to be combined with this set of colors here, or whatever, and you really get to kind of control and play the way the thing's going to look. But anyways, it's been reduced to 10 colors. Now maybe I want to put this one up here. Now I'm down to 9 colors, so if I increase it back up to 10, what will happen? It adds in a brown. One way or another, we have that ability to say, okay, all of these colors are going to be converted to red, and all of these colors are going to be converted to yellow, and we've got some dark green, and these are the colors that the software is going to select. So when I say finish, we can see here, and if I zoom in over top of it, what it looks like when converted into cross stitch. So it's again an interpretation of a photograph, and now we have a cross stitch version of my sunset design. So yeah, one more time we'll do it again, why not, and I'll say new, and this time we're going to go with the same photograph, but we're going to convert it to photo stitch. Say next, select the same fabric, and again it's that 4 basic colors plus black. Say finish, and so there's my photograph. And again, if I zoom over top, we can see how it applied the different photo stitch type stitches over top of that photograph to give the look of the sunset over the Saskatchewan landscape with the lake and the sky. So anyway, that's converting a photograph into embroidery using the automatic tools. And I think now I'm going to go ahead and prepare to talk about using the scanner. Okay, so let's continue on with the quick start guide, and this time what we were going to do is just talk about creating a new graphic from your scanner. And of course you're welcome to just go ahead and use your scanner with your own scanning software and then save the image and then bring it into Creative Drawings as you would any other image, but there is the ability to interface with your scanner right here within the Creative Drawings software. So what we'll do is start a new design. And we're going to choose Get Image from Scanner. And when I say next, it brings up an image scan, like a preview box, and it basically initializes my scanner. Now, you would have the ability to select your scanner, I guess if you had more than one scanner attached to your computer, but I don't, so it's just automatically found my CanoScan scanner. And so you have some settings that you can control in here. First of all, you're going to want to hit the preview button. That's going to put the image on your screen. So it's going now, and I can hear my scanner working. It's going to read that image, so it takes a second to make a pass over top of, and I've basically put a sheet of paper, an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper on my scanner that I had printed out, and it was one of the lessons from the Creative Drawings website, so I should be able to get the Creative Drawings logo off of the page. So here you can see the page, and there's some text, and I guess this was one of the things that I found on the Creative Drawings website. Now, what I'm going to do is I want to just scan in the logo. So I'm just simply going to hold my mouse over the top left corner, click and drag to make a selection box. And so what I've done is I've chosen this area as the area that I want to scan, and I'm just going to click again to let go. See, the original size in millimeters is 216 by 297, and when I do that sort of selection, it shows me now that my selection is going to be basically 73 millimeters wide by 28 millimeters tall. And if you wanted it bigger than that, we could choose to adjust the image size. So maybe I'll just change it from 100 to 200 so that when it scans it out and saves it, it'll double the size from 100 or from 73 to like 150 basically in width. Now I have the ability to choose between a full color logo, which in this case I guess would be red and white, or convert that to grayscale, or just convert that to simply be black and white. And a lot of times that can be very helpful because it just simplifies, instead of having multiple shades of red, we can just have simply black and white. So I'm going to choose to scan this in as black and white. You have the choice of scan quality, basically high, medium, and low. I'm going to leave it set at high. You can adjust things like your brightness and your contrast. You do have the ability, if you click on Advanced Scan, it actually closes this image scan preview window and brings you to your own scanner interface, because oftentimes you may have even more settings available with the interface that comes with your scanner. But I was just going to go through the settings that came with the Creative Drawings, because the other settings are going to be different depending on what scanner you have and how it works. It may be different, but in this case, just using the Creative Drawings image scan box, these are the settings that we can control, and it works quite well. So basically I've selected my area, I've chosen black and white, I've got it set for high quality scan, I made it to be 200% of the original size image, and I'm just going to choose to scan it. So now that takes a moment, and basically my scanner will go ahead and create the image based on the piece of paper that's sitting on the scanner. So I can hear right now my scanner's processing this pass. It's making a pass with the light over top of the image, basically capturing a photograph that we can then use to create embroidery from. So it just takes a moment, and when it's done, it right away asks me to save it, and so I'm just going to go back to Trevor's Designs, and I think we'll call this Creative Jpeg. Good enough. Save. Okay, so now my options are to open it as a backdrop, to trace it and try and convert it automatically to embroidery, or open it as cross stitch or photo stitch. Now I'm just going to let it open it up as a backdrop. For me, this is the most common thing that I do when I create embroidery, is I just bring the image in as a backdrop. I'm going to leave it set for regular cotton for the embroidery. And so there you have the image that we scanned from the piece of paper, and you can see it's been converted to black and white. It's actually fairly high quality, reasonably nice clean lines to work from. And I'm not going to go ahead and digitize this whole logo, but just to give you an idea of how I could do that, I'm going to choose again that Bezier shape tool. And I'm going to click on, and maybe I'll just do the letter D. So I'm going to start right here, click, and come up to the corner, click, come over here, click. Now I want to get a curve, so I'm going to click and drag, and click and drag, and click and drag, and you just basically draw the shape that you want. You click and drag when you want a curve, you just click when you want it to be straight, and so click and drag to get those curves in there. Yeah, and when I finish clicking on this last this place where I started, it automatically fills it in, and then if I right click, it'll fill that in with red, and I can see here that the software is automatically selected to do the fill as a satin stitch and it's got an outline, which is in a run line. If I didn't want an outline, I could click on None. And that basically says this object will not have an outline. And so now you can see that I've been able to create that letter just by digitizing it myself. So that's how you can capture an image from your webcam. And I think that really kind of concludes the quick start guide to the Artistic Sewing Suite. So we've overviewed the different processes that we use most commonly, and I certainly have not covered all of the tools in the software and all of the nuances and how to use those tools. And so the next segment that I'm going to do is going to be a more in-depth look at all of the tools and features of the Creative Drawings software.